April the 22nd, 2016. Guys, there's information coming out that we all have talked about before, and you've seen it on many channels now for years on YouTube. But the way the situation is on our planet now, I think it's more prevalent and more relevant than any other time in history. But look, guys, you've all heard, or most of you have, of Lloyd's of London. It's one of the largest insurers in the world. It's been there forever. I think maybe it may have even insured the Titanic. It does major shipping and very large accounts. But they have commissioned a consultant. It's called the Risk Advisory Group to produce a report analyzing what factors could prompt the spread of civil unrest around the world. And so RAG, or the Risk Advisory Group, did it, and the report found that instances of political violence, contagion, are becoming more frequent, and the contagion effect is even more rapid and powerful with head of exposure management and reinsurance. Now, that's what they're doing. It's like, is it a high hurricane area or a high flood area? But things are changing. They're saying that the global outbreaks of violence are increasing and are likely to develop into pandemics of civil unrest. I'm going to talk about this, and we've talked about it before. The report continues and says the transformation will lead to widespread disruption, yet prove extremely difficult to anticipate and threaten international stability, according to this report. It found that the potential for mass civil unrest represents a highly important dimension of political risk, and that preparations for such scenarios are currently insufficient. I'm not through with the report. As we have recently highlighted, the ultra-wealthy are highly concerned about civil unrest and have made moves to prepare for social disorder. Elitists are buying luxury, bomb-proof survival bunkers, with one of the companies behind the underground units, Vivos. Guys, and you can look that up. I'll put a link to it. It's revealing that they are there for the protection of high net worth individuals against the threat posed by the general public. That's you and me. Now, why would there be a threat from us? Is it because of corruption, mass murder through statin drugs, bailing out the banks, wars, opening our borders, destroying the country, destroying every country on the planet? Why would we be upset? It says this is for wealthy people who are concerned about various disaster scenarios, but a common theme among them is a fear of civil unrest. All of the people, almost 99%, it says, that were asked about why they were doing this purchase, says they fear an uprising. Now, we've talked about people fleeing major cities, fleeing Japan right after Fukushima, but in this report, the most up-to-date that I can find, it says millionaires are fleeing Chicago and other major cities due to concerns over racial tensions and rising crime rates. Guys, this has been planned by the New World Order, by the elitists, by the 1%. It's a depopulation plan, and they plan to escape it, let the people wipe each other out. We'll go into that, and then reemerge. All of those plans don't work out quite the way they think they will. It says about 3,000 individuals, now check this out, with net assets of $1 million or more left Chicago in the last year alone. And this is going, if you look at the report from the Chicago Tribune, 3,000. You've seen the reports there, the police and people fighting, things like that, guys. A lot of corruption going on. Ron Emanuel, Obama, and people like that came from this area. But Paris and Rome are also seeing a mass exodus of millionaires, while wealthy elites are also installing panic rooms. And these are the ones that probably have somewhere else to go, but in case they're caught in their big city apartments over potential civil unrest and skyrocketing crime. They're installing them there. But land and remote homes in places like New Zealand are also popular with the global 1%, with realtors citing the threat of worldwide financial instability and domestic disorder as motivating factors behind these purchases. Now, people around the world are listening to this report. It was a high-dollar deal, cost a lot of money, and again, Lloyd's of London is a big-time insurance company and investment company, if I'm not mistaken. But what's happening now is FEMA, here in the U.S., are getting police and to be trained on how to conduct mass arrest of the public. It says the Department of Homeland Security oversaw a first-of-its-kind 3-day training exercise in Texas this week. Now, the report came out yesterday. It says with police officers from 15 different departments taking part in drills on how to deal with riots and conduct mass arrest. Now, they used not staged actors, but kids from the McClellan Community College that posed as unruly demonstrators during the drill, which took place at the McClellan Community College Emergency Services Education Center. Now, the people involved there learn how to counter domestic and civil disturbances, and again, coordinated by the DHS Center for Domestic Preparedness, as well as proper use of batons, mass arrest procedures, and riot control formations. It says riots are hard to detain, and as little officers as they have, they are probably going to be outnumbered most of the time. It's vital that they get it correct the first time, Criminal Justice Mayor Dylan Solis said. Now, guys, think about this. Instead of spending all this money and trying to upgrade the lives of the American people, and one way would be, instead of spending this money, give us a tax break. But instead of doing that, they're preparing and they're creating chaos. Remember, order out of chaos? And they want many people to destroy one another in the chaos. But instead of trying to help, they're setting up to destroy as many as they can. And what the police don't realize is all they're doing is putting a buffer up as these elites escape into their bunkers and leave them out to deal with it. So think about that. If you're being trained for this type of thing, they're setting it up to fail. They know that there will be mass depopulation, and they think they will reemerge. That's the plan. Also in the training, it said they involved protesters provoking the cops, but classroom briefings also on large crowd management, critical thinking, intuitive decision-making skills, and the public's right to peaceable assembly were also held. FEMA instructors were on hand to advise the cops on the protesters' constitutional rights, as well as how to handle situations with multiple arrest and mobile field force team method. Now, you can read between the lines on this next section of this, guys, about this training. And I don't know if you want to put a false flag situation there or not, but listen, it says the training is expected to be put into practice in realistic situations, and more drills are being planned for the future. It says police departments across the country are buying riot gear in expectation of more Ferguson-style civil unrest sweeping the country. Why? Again, why, guys? Why? Because they wouldn't let you vote in Colorado, and they're letting the people like Ted Cruz go in and steal the delegates? Why in Flint, Michigan, when all your jobs are gone and you can't drink the water? Why would anyone be unhappy when we're spending trillions of dollars overseas while they rob the taxpayers, won't take care of the veterans, and giving all the money away, that the tax money that we can barely afford to pay, guys, to support illegal immigration? It goes back to the New World Order plan called the Albert Pike letter. Let's look at it just a moment. Now, this letter was supposedly written between 1871 and 1898. It was between Otto von Bismarck, co-conspirator Albert Pike, and Albert Pike head of the Masons, head of the Illuminati at that time. Now, guys, we've talked about this letter many times in the past sections of it. Let's just look at it, and I want you to pause it if we go through it too quick and absorb what we're talking about. But before the First World War, was the plans. It says this First World War must be brought about in order to permit the Illuminati to overthrow the power of the czars in Russia and making the country a fortress of atheistic communism. We saw that all the way up to Reagan when he said bring down that wall, but it's still there. The divergences caused by the agentur or the agents of the Illuminati between the British and Germanic empires will be used to foment this war. We saw that in World War I and II. At the end of the war, communism will be built and used in order to destroy the other governments and in order to weaken the religions. We see that now here. It says the Second World War will be fomented by taking advantages of the differences between the fascists and the political Zionists. This war must be brought about so that Nazism is destroyed. We saw that. And that the political Zionism be strong enough to institute a sovereign state of Israel and Palestine. We saw that happen, guys. After World War II, they established Israel. We saw that. 47, it was declared a state, and they established it in 48. 47, it was in the United Nations. Now, and so what they did, they destroyed the Germans, the Nazis, and allowed Israel to be come back to the Holy Land so that them and the Palestinians would fight, brought on by order out of chaos, that policy. During the Second World War, international communism must be strong enough in order to balance Christendom, which would be then restrained and held in check until the time when we would need it for the final social cataclysm. Think about this. Now, you want to know why they're building the temples of Baal, and you're seeing temples of Satan and all of these things popping up worldwide and all of this madness? It's because of this. This was the plan. It says the Third World War must be fomented by taking advantages of the differences caused by the agentures of the Illuminati between now the political Zionists and the leaders of the Islamic world. You ever heard of ISIS? The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam, the Muslim Arabic world, and political Zionism, the state of Israel, mutually destroy each other. You ever heard when Jerusalem is surrounded by enemies to flee? You ever heard that? Meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on this issue, will be constrained to fight to the point of complete physical, pay attention, moral, are we seeing that? Spiritual, and economical exhaustion. What are they fighting about? Israel and the Muslim world. And now the Muslim world has created chaos in Europe by the way that it went down, by this mass invasion that has been slowed somewhat in the United States compared to what it is there. Let's go on. It says, we shall unleash the nihilist and the atheist, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm, which in all of its horror will show clearly to the nations the effect of absolute atheism, the origin of savagery, and of the most bloody turmoil. Now, what are they saying there? We shall unleash the nihilists. Now, when you saw this mass invasion in Europe and what they're trying to do here, that's the unleashing. Now, why would they want to destroy the nihilists and the atheist? Let's go on. It says, then everywhere, where the world, the citizens obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries. What were they talking about? Were they buying the bunkers now? And will exterminate those destroyers of civilization and the multitude disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will from that moment be without compass or direction, anxious for an ideal, but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out in the public view. Are you seeing it come out in the public view now? Now, how would they disillusion Christianity? And how would Christians be without compass or direction, anxious for an ideal? Because they've been taught in the end days, in this last generation, a false doctrine, a false hope. We're here to stand and fight. But when that magic bus doesn't come down and float everyone out of here, guys, I'm being honest. I'm not trying to hurt anyone's feelings. When that doesn't happen, when that, what they call the rapture, does not happen, because it was not taught when I was a kid in the churches. It was not taught. It was taught in the book of Revelation to put your spiritual armor on and stand and fight. Don't be like the third of the fallen angels that followed Satan and were cast out of heaven. Don't do that. But when things like that happen, that's disillusionment. But so now where do they turn this adoration? Pay very close attention to this letter. They will willingly accept, the book of Revelation says they will worship the beast. Now remember, this is their plan, not God's plan. This is Satan's plan. But let's continue. It says, this manifestation, again, will result from the general reactionary movement which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time. Satan hates Christians. We see that. We see the pressure on states like Carolina and Mississippi about the LGBT stuff. But why would they want to destroy the atheist? Because they don't worship anybody. They want the Luciferian doctrine to be taught and brought about on this planet. But Christ is going to intervene, guys. But it's going to get deep before then. He tells us, in those days, after the tribulation, you will see the Son of Man. All throughout the Bible. That's where we're at. Pay attention. This is a heads up. Be safe.